What's up guys? Welcome to my YouTube channel, Dual Purpose. If this is your first time here, my name is Latoya and you're watching another episode of Dual Purpose Conversations, where I get to interview amazing people from around the world who share their personal testimonies. We're also talking about self-care, self-love, and faith and business. So if you would like to be featured on this show, there is an email address in the description of this video. Email us and a member of the Dual Purpose team will be in touch with you. So today I will be interviewing the amazing Darren Ferguson, who is literally a walking miracle. Darren is the only known person to have had 5 transplants and is still alive. And I'm really looking forward to sharing Darren's story with you today. I have known Darren for many years and his story still blesses me, and I'm sure it will be a blessing to you. So as we go through this video, feel free to comment, and also comment if there are any specific topics that you would like for us to cover during the Dual Purpose Conversations series. If you'd like to register for our mailing list where we send out a monthly devotional, there's a link in the description of this video. Simply sign up and we'll make sure that you are included in our monthly mailings. So let's get into the video. So welcome to today's show, Darren. Thank you so much for joining us. And just before we go any further into your story, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into your incredible story.
Okay, first of all, it's great to be with you, Latoya. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my story, my testimony. As you know, my name is Darren Ferguson. I am 39 years old. What do? I run all the social media for Faith Dimensions Ministries in Milton Keynes. That's what I do.
Okay, great. So one of the things I want to talk about is your amazing book, which is called How I Survived 5 Kidney Transplants and Won. And I really enjoyed reading this book because a lot of the pages, it was like I was watching a movie. It's very descriptive for telling us what you went through. And so it's difficult to summarize that in the time that we have. But I just want to start by asking you, what age were you when you were diagnosed with renal failure?
Okay, so I was actually diagnosed at 3 weeks old.
Wow.
In Kettering, where we lived at the time. So yeah, okay. 3 weeks old.
Okay, so how did your parents know that something was wrong at 3 weeks old? Obviously, you couldn't vocalize how you were feeling, what was going on. What were the signs that your parents realized something's not quite right?
Yeah, sure. So basically, mum gave birth, went home, and all that happened was she put me down to sleep, and I'd just sleep. I wouldn't cry, I wouldn't wake up for feeding or anything like a normal child would do. So after a little, well, not after a little while, quickly she realized that something was wrong, because when she tried to feed me, the food would go in one side of my mouth and out the other. Yeah, and I had no wet nappies or anything at all. So she took me to our local GP at the time. As I said, in Kettering, they'd done a number of tests, and immediately they sent me to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, and they'd done a number of tests, and then yeah, the journey started from there, where they diagnosed me with chronic kidney failure.
Okay, you do talk about Great Ormond Street quite a lot in your book, so we'll get onto that a little bit later. But I also wanted to ask you, so in the intro of your book, you spoke a lot about how some patients, when, for example, they have a kidney transplant and the transplant rejects, that sometimes patients can blame themselves. I thought it was quite interesting that you mentioned that right up front in the book. Was there a particular reason that you felt that was something that you wanted to address right up front in your book?
Yeah, it is, because the book really is, first and foremost, it's an encouragement to people who are going through the same thing that I am. So kidney failure. I really wanted to encourage them first, because I know exactly how they feel. But then on the back end of that, I wanted to encourage people in general, because we all go through things. But with that certain part of the book, we can, as renal patients, blame ourselves. And I say that because I lost a kidney. My second transplant, I lost because of negligence of what I was doing.
Okay.
So after my transplant, I went back to work too early. I just went about my normal life when really I should have taken enough time to rest, recover, let the kidney do what it needs to do. And then I went through a period of blaming myself if I didn't do this, if I'd done that, etc., etc. So that's why I put that in the book, because as renal patients, when we have a transplant and it fails, that question does come up every time. If I'd done this, if I'd done that, would it have lasted longer, etc., etc. So that chapter really is for renal patients.
Okay, but am I right in thinking that it's every time, say for example, a kidney rejects or fails, it's not always the patient's fault? There are lots of different circumstances where the kidney can fail. Like you mentioned, for yours, your second transplant, it was negligence, but I'm assuming that, you know, there are times when it just fails for whatever reason.
Yeah, sure. As you say, the kidney fails for numerous reasons. You know, we have to understand that when we have a transplant of any organ, kidney, lung, whatever it is, when it comes from somebody else and it goes into your body, the body fights it because it knows that it's not its own organ.
Okay.
So there's always that battle. And a kidney could reject, you know, for whatever. It could be an infection. It could just give up. You know, the fight is too much for that particular organ. In my case, kidney.
Okay.
You know, yes, it can be negligence, like we don't take our medication, or we don't rest, or we don't follow the doctor's orders. But then it's a number of things. It's a number of things, and you know, only the doctor can tell us most of the time why the kidney rejected.
Right. Okay. So for anybody watching this who is suffering from kidney failure, and you know you're looking for encouragement, I would definitely say get this book, because Darren very much details his own experiences, and also there's a lot of encouragement, as you heard him say, for those people who are dealing with any kind of medical issue in general. This is definitely a book that I would recommend that you read. So you mentioned earlier that you know, everybody goes through something in their life. For you, your situation was chronic renal failure. For other people, it could be any number of different things. You also mentioned in the book that your support system, your family and your friends played a really important role in getting you through this journey. So would you mind talking a little bit about that? Why is it so important to have a great support structure, and really how your support structure helped you to get to where you are today?
Yeah, okay. So that's really two questions. So I'll answer the first one. For me, my personal support structure. So I've always been blessed with having a great support system in place, from my parents, my brother, close friends, and I've always had a great support structure from whichever hospital I've been at. I've always developed great relationships with the doctors or surgeons, or, you know, at the time, school teachers when I was younger. And, you know, throughout this whole period, if it wasn't for that, only God knows what would have happened, you know, because there has been times, many times, where I just wanted to give up and die, literally. But you know, I would have someone either praying for me or send me an encouraging word, or we'd go out for the day and just take my mind off it. And it's really important that we have that. You know, not just me with my situation, but us people in life. We need somebody that we can go to. So when we are feeling weak, we're feeling discouraged, we're feeling hopeless, we're feeling like we want to give up, we're feeling like we want to die, you know, there's that helping hand. There's that hand say, you know what, you're not going to give up today. You know, and they hold your hand long enough that when you're able to have the strength to say, you know what, I'm actually okay now. You know, because life is a journey. Life is a journey. There's going to be times that we're up, there's going to be times that we're going to be down, and it's not just a one-time thing. So yeah, then I can't stress enough how important it is to have a very good, strong and stable support system, whoever it is, friends, family, teacher, whoever. You know, as long as you have it, it's great.
Wonderful. So on page 13 of your book, you mentioned an account where you unfortunately lost a kidney pretty much straight after the surgery itself. So you mentioned how you looked at your mum and you asked her whether the transplant worked or not. And I just found that to be such a moving part of your journey. Would you mind just explaining a little bit more about that and what that experience was like?
Yeah, sure. It's an experience that I will never forget. Literally 24 hours, my life changed overnight. So we got the call from, I was at Royal Free Hospital at the time. We got the call saying there's a kidney available. So we went to the hospital, done all the tests. Surgeons came back and said, you know what, really good kidney. It's a great match. It's going to work. All the hype story. And, I got excited thinking, okay, soon as all this is over, I'm going to have my life back. I was still young. I'll go and play football, be able to go out with my friends, etc., etc. So I was excited. I was ready. And so we went for the surgery. And I'll never forget. I woke up, coming around from the surgery. And I never forget, my mum was on the left-hand side of me. And I asked her a question, but I knew something was wrong just from her face. I said, did the kidney work? And I remember it was almost like slow motion. She came over to me and she just leaned her head on my chest and said, I'm really sorry, son, it didn't work. They had to remove the kidney. And I never forget. I just burst into tears, literally just burst into tears and just felt absolutely hopeless. And yeah, up till now, it's still really emotional to even talk about it, because I just remember that look in my mum's face of absolute despair, that she knew that she couldn't help me at that particular time. And also the pain that I felt just in my heart, that I just felt like my life was over, literally. And I remember I literally just cried myself till I went back to sleep. And from there, it was a devastating journey. I couldn't be left alone. I really felt like I wanted to kill myself because I had no hope. I had nothing at all. So I felt at the time to live for. And it was a hard blow. It was a really hard blow at the time, not just for me, but for my family, my mom, my dad, my brother. It was a really painful time, real painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those accounts in this book that was just so moving. It was as if you were watching a movie, the way that you described it, and your mum also mentions it in the book as well. And I think hearing your story, we will never really be able to understand what that felt like in that moment, not just for you, but for your family as well, who had been supporting you along that journey. But one of the things that you mentioned is that there were parts throughout your journey where you wanted to give up, you wanted to take your life, or you wanted God to take you out of the situation, take you out of this world sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think as Christians, that's something that we do feel sometimes, depending on what we're going through, but it's not really something that's widely talked about within the church. So, we may have people watching this video today who feel like that. They might feel like, well, life is so bad for me right now. What's the point of continuing? Why should I live? Why doesn't God just take me? Why don't I just take my life? What would you say to that person who's watching this video and they feel like there's just no hope anymore? Why don't I just, leave?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. Because for the believer, okay, let me kind of separate this question. For the believer, we have to believe that we have a hope. And I know it's easily said than done. I've been there, and this is why I come back to the support structure. Because during that period of when I lost that kidney, I had zero interest in hearing about the things of God. I had zero interest about God's going to bring me through. God's a healer. And the funny thing about that is my dad's a preacher. At the time he was preaching, God will deliver you, God will heal you, whatever it is, but he was always preaching, and it always preaches about the God that will restore, heal. but I didn't want to hear it. You know, as I said, I had zero interest, but my support structure really brought me through that period of time. You know, I was never left alone. You know, my very good friend Tim, you know, who sadly passed away a few years ago, was, you know, he was everything. You know, he was everything during that period. You know, took time off school to be with me. You know, even after school, he came and stayed at my house, or I stayed at his house. You know, Tony's like an adopted mother. You know, to me, I spent many days at their house. So you know, to answer your question, you need to have that support structure. You need to find it somewhere. You know, there's certain things that we go through in life that we just won't overcome on our own. You know, so for the believer, you need to find somebody that can, as we say, pray you through. You know, I don't want to sound too spiritual, you know, but somebody that will help you pray. When you can't pray for yourself, they will pray. You know, if it's somebody that will just cook you a meal, if somebody that will just walk you to the park, you know, just find somebody, you know, that will be able to do that for you. If you're not a believer, and you're in that situation, it's pretty much the same thing. Find somebody. Find somebody. You don't need to be a Christian to be able to find somebody. Okay, if you're not a believer, they may not pray you through, but they can hold your hand while you cry, while you share what you're feeling. You know, go to their house. Just find somebody. You know, you know, at the time I thought taking my life would be a lot easier, not just for me, but I felt that I was becoming a burden to my family. You know, because dad had his business, he had the ministry, mum was dealing with her cancer situation at the time. Obviously, they still had a son, Lee. You know, Lee had to get on with his life, you know, school, growing up, you know, the pressure that you go through growing up as a teen and all that kind of stuff. So I just felt my burden was becoming too much on top of everything else that we were dealing with as a family. So I thought, okay, if I kill myself or God takes me out, then that's one thing they don't have to worry about. But thank God my support structure didn't allow that to happen. And God didn't hear my foolish prayer at the time.
Absolutely.
You know, but it's a question that I've asked myself many times, not just with the third transplant, but there's been other situations that I've been through dealing with the renal failure that I just thought was too much. But again, yeah, I can't stress enough the support that I've had from family, from close friends, from my renal team, renal counselors that have just held my hand when I just wanted to give up.
Okay, so thank you very much for that. So if anybody is watching and you know you feel like maybe you're alone, I think in this day and age now we have so many support groups, and there are resources out there that, you know, if you don't have maybe family and friends close by, there are still people that you can reach out to on the phone, or various different support groups. And I think one of the things that you mentioned throughout what you were just saying is, it seems to me that isolation really is very dangerous, and sometimes more dangerous. It kind of compounds the thought that you've already got, that maybe it's better if I'm not here. So if you isolate yourself from people, it seems like what you're saying is that it's then easier to follow through with the thoughts that you've got, because there's nobody to tell you, actually, if you were to take your life, you know, you would be missed. And I think for you, Darren, you have such an incredible story now, that had you gone through with that back then, the amount of people that you've been able to bless through your story. Me personally, you know, I've drawn strength from your story as well over the years, and I know a lot of people have. So I think, you know, sometimes we look at what's here right now, but we can't see the future, and it's only really God that knows what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, of course. It's you know, it's been difficult. I'm not going to say it's been easy, but I'm so grateful that I'm still here. You know, and you're 100% right. Isolation is not the one when you're going through whatever situation. You know, because that thought in your mind, oh, let me kill myself, you can justify it. You know, when I was going through it, I had every reason why I should do it. you know, as I said, my mum's going through cancer. My dad's got a business. He's got the church. We've got, I've got a brother, you know, and all the time that they're taking me to the hospital and staying, because mum used to stay with me in hospital at the time, you know, even though she was sick. I was thinking, okay, she could be at home resting. She could be at home taking care of Lee, or, you know, doing something other than looking after me. So I could easily justify why it would have been easy to do it. But then when I was around my support structure, that thought wasn't there. You know, when I was with Tim, we played PlayStation or we played football. You know, so at that time, I wasn't thinking about killing myself. I wasn't thinking about my illness. You know, I wasn't thinking about the pain. You know, so it's really important, as you say, and I 100% agree. Stay around people. You know, and sometimes you have to force yourself, you know, to do it, because sometimes I just felt like, oh, I don't want to go out today. You know, I just want to stay at home. You know, but sometimes you have to push yourself to say, you know what, go out. You know, or again, if you got the right person, they will force you to leave your house. They will force you. You know, I mean, Timmy, bless him, the amount of times that he said, like, Timmy, Darren, I'm picking you up. You know, you're coming to my house, or I'm coming to your house for a weekend. You know, and it was really good, because for those couple of days, you know, I just forgot about everything. You know, so I know we're really we're focusing a lot on the support structure, but it's really important that you find that you know, as you say, nowadays there's so many different options. You know, as far as support, you know, you can speak to counselors, you can call people. Like you say, if you don't have friends and you don't have family, you know, medically there's people there that can speak to you, and they won't speak to you in a medical sense. They will speak to you as a friend. You know, so you can tell them anything, because there's been times that I've told medical professionals I wanted to kill myself, and they didn't judge me. They didn't give me medical advice. They didn't just say, go and take this tablet and sleep it off. They spoke to me at the point of where I was. You know, so for anybody that's watching this that may feel that low, that killing yourself is the option, I'm telling you that it's not. It's not the option, because, you know, nothing lasts forever. You know, you will get through that stage. It's a process that you have to go through, and it is painful, but it's easier when you have somebody holding your hand at that time.
Okay. You touched on a lot there that I want to expand on a little bit. Okay. So you spoke about your childhood and, you know, your best friend who unfortunately passed away. So I want to touch on that a little bit, because you mentioned in your story how you felt that you missed out on just being a normal child, you know, being able to do the things that other children were doing. So I want to touch on that, but also, you know, you've spoken quite a bit in this interview about wanting to take your life and things like that. And I think it's a topic that's not really spoken about in church. And so you find that people are having those thoughts, but they think, well, if I speak to brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so, they're going to judge me because we're Christians and I know what the Bible says and my times are in God's hands and things like that. So if I'm now feeling like I want to take my life, they'll think, well, are you saved or are you not saved? And I think it's a topic that we do really need to discuss, because people are in that place. And I think everybody needs to have that place of no judgment, where they know that they can go to somebody and say, these are the thoughts I'm having. This is how I feel. I know God loves me. I know what the Bible says, but I just need somebody to listen. And I think it's really important that you had that friend. I know that, you know, Tim was a Christian. So I think it helps also if you have somebody who can support you, who believes what you believe and can encourage you back to that place where you have that strength again.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it is, unfortunately, certain topics are not spoken about in church that needs to be spoken about. For whatever reason, I don't know why it's not spoken about. You know, suicide is one of them, but there's many others that we can talk about that is not spoken in church. And I think in the day that we live, every subject should be approached in church, because if we say church is the place of hope, restoration, and all of that other stuff that we say, You know, you can't just say, oh, we can speak about finance, we can speak about marriage, we can speak about whatever, but we can't touch this subject. You know, if church is for everybody, everybody's going to come to church, and everybody's going to come with a different situation at that time. And I think, you know, we're living in a time where mental health is on the rise.
Yeah.
You know, it's on the rise. A lot of people are struggling. And, you know, when you're suffering from mental health, thoughts of suicide can come.
Yeah.
You know, it can come. So it's one of those subjects that I would say needs to be spoken about. And to that person that is feeling that right now, feeling that right now, what I would say is find somebody, because I know you can't speak to everybody in church. I know that.
Yeah.
I know that.
No
Okay.
comment.
You can't do that. But I would say
there must be somebody, surely.
right. There's somebody. There
Yeah.
is somebody that you can speak to. Okay. Unfortunately, you know, you have to be wise. But what I would say is, if you have a relationship with somebody in church, you know, you may have had a conversation in the past. You know, you've confided in them in the past, then speak to that person.
Yeah.
You know, what I would say is make sure they are, okay, we're talking about church right now. So I would say make sure they're grounded in their relationship with God. You know, that you know that they're going to give you sound advice. You know, but again, be wise. You got to be careful. You know, if you know, we're lucky in our church, we've got great leaders in our church. You know, so we can speak to them. But whatever church you go to, find somebody.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Find somebody. You must be able to find somebody. Of course, I know there's certain things that we go through. You need to go to medical professional.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, if somebody said to me, you know, I'm dealing with this mental health or this particular illness, you know, I'll try and encourage them as much as I can. But then I'd always say, okay, you need to go and seek medical advice. You know, but I personally want the church to open their mind, you know, more, that we speak about certain subjects. You know, so many young people have been lost because they haven't found that refuge where they can speak to somebody, or they have gone and spoken to somebody and they've taken it to another 3, 4, 5 people. You know, so the trust has been broken, or they've gone and spoken to somebody and they've been shut down. You know, which I think is completely wrong.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, if the church is for everybody, then we need to accommodate and be willing to hear whatever subject comes in. Whatever subject. It could be mental health, it could be adultery, it could be whatever. It could be, you know, oh, I want to kill somebody. You know, we live in a drastic world, okay? And we live in a drastic world now, and no subject should be shut down as far as I'm concerned. So please, you know, whatever you're facing, not you personally, Latoya, but whoever's listening. But yeah, you too, Latoya, because you're my sister. You know,
I know you got me.
you know, but please find that person. It's really important. You know, I could just think off the top of my head the people that were there for me. You know, as I've said, Timmy, Tony, my parents, Charmaine. You know, these are people that were there for me from day one. You know, and growing up, I've had other people. Like, I know my sister Latoya is there for me. I can call her 24/7. I know that. Sachelle, there's many people.
Yeah, you're very blessed.
I am very blessed. I am very blessed. You know, my wife. You know, but I understand. Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody has that support structure. So, I would say if you don't have that, then speak to a medical professional who can lead you in the right direction. Or speaking to somebody. But as we've said, if you don't have that, then me and Latoya there, you know, contact us via email and we will do what we can when we can.
Yeah, and I think it's important what you said as well. You know, if somebody comes to you with a particular topic, you'll support them as much as you can, but you may need to say to them, actually speak to so and so. And I think sometimes even that's good enough. Sometimes people don't even know where to start. So just to be able to signpost somebody to say, there's this particular support group, there's this, there's that. Why don't you consider speaking to those people? I think sometimes even just being able to do that for somebody is also helping that person as well.
Yeah, sometimes the best advice is pointing them to someone medically.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's enough help.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This wasn't one of my questions that I planned to ask, but I think I'm going to ask it anyway. So one of the things that I don't often talk about, as you know, is that I am a pastor's daughter. So I grew up being a PK, as they call us. And do you think it's more difficult sometimes as a PK dealing with certain issues? Because for me, one of the reasons that I don't really talk about it, it's not because I'm ashamed or anything like that. It's more about, I remember growing up, obviously now I'm a member of your father's church. My dad lives in another country. But one of the things I remember growing up was that I felt as though I didn't really have an identity, if that makes sense. So you go to places and people are like, oh, it's Bishop Newland's daughter. Yeah, but my name's Latoya. You know, and it wasn't malicious or anything. But sometimes your identity can get wrapped up in what your parents do. Do you think it's more difficult sometimes as a pastor's child to feel free enough to express some of these emotions, to express that we feel angry, depressed, suicidal, you know, those types of things? Because there's almost a stigma that because your parents are who they are, you know, you're almost not allowed to feel certain things or to express certain things or to make certain mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, growing up, that was a battle that I had for many years. Being a as we say, PK, pastor's kid. You know, I'd walk on the street and be like, "Hey, Pastor Glenn's son." I'm like, okay, like, I actually do have a name, but
Exactly.
you know, and I used to accept it for a while, but then I got really tired of it, and then you know, I had to say, you know what, I actually do have a name. You know, my name is Darren. You know, and they knew what my name was, but I don't know what it is about people why they call PKs, pastors' kids, by their parents' name, not their actual name. But I you know, I struggled for a long time. You know, I struggled for a long time, not just with that, but also, you know, people calling my parents mum and dad. You know, I just, you know, I hated it. I hated it. It's like, they're not your parents. You know, go to your mum and dad. You know, they're mine. They're Lee's. You know, and yeah, it's almost like for a long while, you almost have to put on this kind of mask. You know, that everything's all right. You know, because you know, this is what dad is preaching. You know, God is a healer, and God, you know, will do this and do that. And you know, I know the type of person my dad is. No matter what he's facing, when he stands on a Sunday, you would never know.
Yeah.
You would never know what he's feeling. You know, he could have literally been throwing up or feeling such pain literally 5 minutes before church started. But then he would come down and he would do his thing. And then when he finished, he will go back and deal with whatever he has to deal with. So I think people saw that, or they see that, and they automatically assume that that's how we are as you know, the kids. So growing up, you know, I felt a lot of pain and whatever, but I didn't feel that I could verbalize it. You know, have to hold it in. But the problem is, when you hold it in, it eventually blows up.
Yeah.
It eventually blows up. So I think it's very difficult for pastors' kids. I don't think people really understand unless you're in it. You know what you have to deal with. Yeah, it's a blessing, you know, but it can have a negative side. Can have a negative side. You know, I tell you what I really struggled with, to be honest with you, is I saw how my parents done for people. You know, they really put themselves out for people, and those same people turn around and do them bad, or they say something bad about them. And I just, you know, it took everything in me not to go after that person.
Yep.
You
I
know,
can relate to that one.
it really took everything in me. And you know, the sort of person my mum is, she never talks bad about anybody. You know, she would say, it's okay, leave it to God. God will deal with it. I'm like, no, God taking too long. You know, hey, God is taking too long to deal with this. Let me deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a lot for pastors' kids to see, you know, especially when you have a good relationship with your parents, you know, and you see the sacrifices that they make. You know, for them to be treated like that or spoken about in a negative way, when you know all that your parents want to do is help, guide, nurture people to have a better life. You know, so that was really my battle growing up as a PPK. Now that I'm older, you know, I still struggle with the mum and dad part, to be honest with you. I still struggle with that.
Can I cut this bit out?
Keep it in, keep it in. I struggle with it, okay?
At least you're being honest. This is an open forum, no judgment.
Hey, listen, I struggle with it, but
I'll call them mum and dad on Sunday though, just so you know.
But you know what? I see how my parents are saving lives. You know, all jokes aside, they're saving people's lives. They're saving marriages. They're saving relationships. They're saving the youth. You know, and I see people that call them mum and dad. It's just out of respect. You know, I know some people literally see them like their mum and dad, and in a way, I prefer that than for people to talk negative.
Yeah.
So it's something that I just have to deal and live with.
You can't have it all.
I can't. And you know what? I'm proud of my parents. I really I'm super proud of them. You know, and I'm blessed to call them my parents.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm blessed to be a pastor's kid. You know, to be fair, I'm sure if I was in another family, I wouldn't be here. You know, the good thing, there's certain coverings and there's certain blessings that you get in a pastor's family that you may not get in another family. You know, so all jokes aside, you know, I'm just blessed to be a part of that family, despite the struggles that I had growing up with the identity that you've spoken about as a pastor's kid. You know, now that I'm older, I'm grown up, I'm more mature, I understand the covering that comes with that. You know, so I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
You can't anyway.
Yeah, well, we can't. You know, we'll always be known as the pastor's kids. So it is what it is. It is what it is.
Okay, and one of the other things that you spoke about in your book, and you've mentioned in this interview as well, is how you felt that, you know, a large part of your childhood was robbed, I think is the word that you actually used in the book. Do you want to just talk to us a little bit about what that was like, why you feel your childhood was robbed, what were the things that you saw other children doing that you couldn't do? Just what was it like growing up with dealing with chronic renal failure?
In a word, very difficult. Very difficult. I never forget when I went to school the first day. I mean, I was so short. I had this, you know, my stomach was very large, and my what do you call it, rucksack my mum put on my back was bigger than me. And she took me to the school gate, and the teacher came, and she said, "Oh, we think he's in the wrong school. He should be like in first school." And my mum was like, "No, he's meant to be here." And her look on her face, like, he's so short. But growing up, it was very, very difficult. You know, I missed a lot of schooling. You know, I spent many, many days in hospital. I think one time I spent like 6 months in hospital, 6, 7 months in hospital, and had to actually get a tutor that would come to me while I was having treatment and do whatever. But it wasn't just that. You know, when you're in hospital, you're missing the outside world. You know, your friends are playing football, or they're going to the park, they're going on holiday, just living, you know, eating what they want, drinking what they want, and you're missing that. But also when I was at school, you know, because my friends knew what I was dealing with, they kind of like put me in this kind of bubble. So it's like if I wanted to play football, it's like, no, you can't play, you can't play, you can't play. Or if they did let me play, they wouldn't tackle me as hard. So it was challenging because I knew people didn't look at me the same. So again, mentally, that does something to you that it almost makes you feel like you're different because people are treating you differently. So mentally, it damaged me. Emotionally, it damaged me. But then I got to the point where I had to speak to my friends. I was like, listen, treat me like anybody else. I'm no different to you. But when I used to play football, I used to play very aggressively just to prove the point. But yeah, I do feel growing up, my youth was robbed just because I spent so much time in hospital. And when I came home, I was sick. I either had tubes in my arms or tube in my neck or tubes in my stomach. And I remember when I used to go to school, I used to be so ashamed of the tubes that were hanging out. So I'd change in the corner, or after football or whatever. I wouldn't shower at school. I'll shower when I get home just because I didn't want people seeing, this tube hanging out my stomach. So yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge, but somehow, again, the support structure, God brought me through those very, very tough times.
I think that's another issue that we can touch on as well is self-esteem issues. I think that's a very big topic in the church and outside of the church. But again, it's not as widely talked about in the church, I don't think, as it needs to be, particularly for children, teenagers, young people growing up. There's a lot of issues with self-esteem. And one of the things I'm fortunate to do is to be able to help some of these young ladies on their Christian journey. And that's one of the topics that comes up a lot. Self-esteem, peer pressure issues. I have to have a full face of makeup just to leave the house, or I have to wear this particular brand because all the other girls, and I think that's very difficult. How did you eventually overcome those self-esteem issues?
Do you know what? It took me a long time to be able to overcome it. I've never been a person that's been easily led. Where, oh, this person's wearing this, so I've got to do that. I've never tried to live up to anybody's what they think I should be. Never been influenced by celebrities or anything like that. But yeah, I think my self-esteem was just wanted to be accepted, that I'm normal. Okay, I've got tubes hanging out my neck or my arm or my stomach, but I'm no different than the Joe Bloggs that is sitting next to me in the classroom. When I play football, I'm no different than you. Tackle me as hard as you'll tackle the next person. So for me, that's where it came from. I just wanted people to accept me for Darren, not feel pity for me, not feel sorry for me, and that came across often growing up in school, that they felt sorry for me. So there was times I'd have the ball and nobody would tackle me. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, come on, this is a game of football here. So that's myself. That was where I struggled to, okay, how do I get people to just accept me for me? And I realized over time, conversations, communicating with my school friends, communicating with my teachers, that I'm okay. That, okay, it's not nice that I'm having to deal with this. But when we play football, let's play, or let's not bother. When we're going to play basketball, let's play. And over time, I realized that they were starting to accept me. Because I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. And it's very easy. I could have easily done that. I could have easily milked it. I could have easily milked it so much that I didn't have to go to school. I could have got out of so many lessons, and I could have got out of this, but I didn't want that. I just wanted to be a normal person, go to school Monday to Friday, 9 to 3, take part in every lesson. And as I say, communication was the key.
Yeah.
Your communication was a key, especially with people that I played sport with. You know, after a while, they did tackle me too hard. You know,
You
they
asked for it.
they went the opposite way, and when I got home, I really felt it. Really, oh mate, I really felt it. And you know, mom was like, "Please don't play again. Please don't play. Don't please." You know,
Yeah.
but I think answering your question about feeling accepted, the number one thing you have to do is love yourself
Mm.
and embrace yourself. You know, if you're skinny, if you're overweight, if you're black, if you're white, if you're healthy, if you're sick, whatever, if you're rich, you're poor, wherever you are in life, accept it.
Yeah.
Accept you for you,
Mm-hmm.
and embrace it. Embrace it. And for me personally, I had to look at my health situation and look at it as a blessing.
Mm.
I had to look at it as a blessing and say, do you know what? If if I'm the only person in my family that has renal failure, then it's a blessing.
Mm.
I had to look at myself in it, and it's difficult. It is difficult to look at yourself in the mirror and say, do you know what, Darren? Love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Despite this horrible thing that's hanging out your stomach, despite you got to spend months sometimes in hospital, weeks in hospital.
Mm-hmm.
You have to love yourself for you
Mm.
and understand that only you can bring to the table what you can bring. No one else can bring that.
That's
You,
right.
no one else can bring that. There's many people that deal with renal failure, but
Mm-hmm.
I only Darren can bring what he brings. So now, yes, I love myself, not in the vain kind of way. let's
I'll put you
let's
in check.
let's get it right. Let's get a balance. But every morning you have to wake up and be grateful for life
Mm-hmm.
and say, you know what, I love myself.
Mm.
And I'm going to do something with my life, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to impact the people that I am around.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a journey. Everything that we're talking about today is a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's not going to happen over one day. It's not going to happen over 1 year. Where I am now, trust me, when I was 12, 13, 14, I was horrible. My parents and my brother could tell you some stories. I was just
Maybe I
yeah,
should interview them next.
maybe you should. I was just horrible, but that was
Mm.
part of the process of me trying to deal with what is
Mm.
going on.
Mm.
I said certain things, I acted in certain ways that took me a long time to overcome
Mm-hmm.
and forgive myself for. Because I would die for my parents, I die for my brother, but the way I treated them during certain periods, which is wrong and was bad. And sometimes when we're going through things, we lash out at the people we love most,
Mm-hmm.
the people that are there for us most.
Mm.
Um, but it was part of the process that I had to go through,
Yeah.
um, to discovering who I was
Mm-hmm.
and discovering who I am, and also discovering what this whole illness was about.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because I dealt with it from 3 weeks old. And
It's all you knew, really.
exactly, that's all I knew. And for a long period of time, my mum and dad sheltered me from it.
Mm-hmm.
You, my mum took me to the hospital. They would speak to my mum while I was in the corner playing with toys or whatever.
Mm.
And she would say, "Okay, it's over, or you need to go for a blood test." So I didn't really know what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got to the age where they said, "Okay, Darren, you need to make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to have this surgery? Do you want to have this process or whatever?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "What were you talking about?" So it was a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And I know, going back to your question, I've gone the long way around it, but to answer your question to like the young person now, because I know there is a lot of pressure
Mm.
in the 21st century, there's a lot of pressure. Before it was just TV, but now they've added social media. you,
Mm.
Before it was magazines and all this kind of stuff, but you got the Instagram, you got the Facebook, you got the TikTok, you got the Snapchat, you got this, you got that, and everybody's telling you need to be this size, you need to be
Mm.
this color, you need to have this length of hair, you know, the guys need to have 6 packs, and you need to be earning this amount, and or you need to have this certain lifestyle. You know, when it's not important.
No.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not important. Okay, yeah, we all want to have a better life. You know, we'd love to have millions in the bank and all this kind of stuff, but not everyone's going to have that. It doesn't mean that your life has no meaning. You know what I mean? Every person on the planet has a purpose.
Yeah.
They have a destiny. They have a reason to be here. You know, and everybody needs to go on that road of that journey of finding out why you're here. You know, and it's not a spiritual answer.
No.
It's not a spiritual answer. It's a life answer. You know, your life has a purpose. Okay, if you're in church, yes, spiritually you have a purpose of what you're meant to do spiritually. But I personally believe if you're a Christian or not, God placed you on this planet for a reason. He placed you on this planet for a reason, and only you can find that reason out. So I would say, you know, don't listen to the media. You know, don't, you know, all those pictures. And it's unfortunate because we've become a society of you're popular by the amount of likes that you get, you know, by the amount of followers that you have on your social media, when, to be honest, it's nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. You know, don't base your life on that. That's what I'm saying. Do not base who you are as a person on the amount of followers that you have, or if you put a picture up, oh, I only got 1 like, so I'm not valued. No, you're valued if you get no likes. You're valued if you get 1 million likes. You know, but you have to go on that journey and discover who you are. And then when you go on that journey of who you are, one day you'll look in the mirror and say, do you know what? I actually am somebody. I actually love myself. Once you can do that, you're on the right path.
Amen.
I know I took a while to answer that, but
no, it's good. It's good because I think it's a very big topic, and it's something that I think needs to be spoken about a lot more. So you touched on a lot of points in your answer, which I think people do need to hear. So no, that was very good.
Okay, cool.
One of the other things I want to ask you is, just briefly, you mentioned in the book that you were dealing with a condition without an origin. Do you want to talk to us about that? Did that make it more difficult for you to deal with your condition because you didn't have any points of reference? There was no one in your family who had gone through this, no one in your immediate circle that you knew that was suffering with this. Did that make it more difficult?
Yeah, it was. It was very difficult because we know the first question that the doctor would ask you when you go to them, has anybody dealt with this in your family? You know, your mom, dad, brother. Well, they start with your immediate family, then they go to your aunts, uncles, grandparents. And my answer was always no. It's only me that has had this. And for a long period of time, I felt like I was the unlucky one. You know, Lee was fine. Dad was fine. Of course, mum had her own medical story to deal with, dealing with cancer. So growing up, I tried to, you know, I looked for, how can I say, my reason, why am I dealing with this in the wrong places? You know, and yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge because I had nobody that I could look to in the sense of a reference. Okay, how did you get through this? When the doctor said this, what did they say to you? When surgery went wrong, how did you overcome it? It was just me one. So every stage of it was very difficult, and I had to overcome every situation differently. And again, I had the support structure that I can ask my mum and dad, you know, when I wanted to speak to them. But yeah, I got to a point, it is what it is. You know, that's I had to look at it that way. You know, then I looked at it as a blessing in some kind of strange way. You know, I must be here for a reason. And I got to a point where if God gave this to me, you know, and I say if God gave this to me, not that he put the physical sickness on me, but if he kept me alive, then he obviously trusts me enough to get through it. was I'm sure he would have answered my prayer, taken me out a long time ago. But the fact that I woke up every morning,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave me that strength to just get through, just get through. And I have to keep stressing, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I don't want people to hear this and think, oh yeah, Darren says, oh, support structure and talk to this person and discovery, and it just happens like that. It really doesn't. I'm 39 and I'm still struggling with certain things as far as my medical is concerned. So it's always a battle. But there's certain things that I know I no longer deal with, as far as loving myself and accepting my illness. I accepted it a long time ago, uh, because I had to realize everybody deals with something in life. It could be bankruptcy, divorce, death. This just happens to be my story that I have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think even though you've spoken about having a strong support structure a lot throughout this interview, even if you have a strong support structure, there is still some level of responsibility on us as the individual to still accept the support, the love, and still do what we need to do in order to get through it. It's not that that support structure is going to make everything perfect and
Yeah, of course.
they're going to fix everything. They're just there to help us through it, to help us to get to that place where we feel strong enough and able enough.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, can I sorry to pause you there, but I have to say, even though I had a support structure, there's things that I went through that I didn't talk to anybody. I just had to deal with on my own. The pain that I felt in my body. There was times that I went to bed and the pain in my body was absolutely insane. It was just, yeah. There's times I went to bed and I've literally seen every hour of the day, and I spoke to nobody about it. So yes, I do stress a lot about the support structure, but there's times that you have to allow yourself to go through that journey on your own, to make you realize that, you know what, I am strong enough to go through this. I can deal with this particular situation. So I don't want people thinking that, okay, Darren has support structure and every time he went through something, he had this person, he had this person, he had this person. Because yeah, there's been times that I've picked up the phone and I put the phone down because I didn't have the words to say. And I just had to deal with that particular situation on my own. So from a spiritual point of view, I know there's times where I know it's only been me and God. Literally me and God. And yeah, I've come through by God's grace. I've come through that particular situation at that time. So I always tell people, you know what, you're stronger than you think you are. You just haven't gone through that particular situation to realize it yet. How strong you are. So I think sometimes it's good that the support structure is not there. Sometimes it's good to make you realize that you actually have to dig deep if you want to get out of this. Because with my third transplant, even though my support structure was there, I know I had to go to a place mentally to get myself out of that. People could say, come on. But until you have the realization that you have to get up and fight, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. So I now know from past experiences that no matter what I face in life, if I dig deep enough, if I fight enough, I'm getting out of it. And you need to have that disposition of don't quit, don't fall. I have this saying, cry if you want to, rest if you want to, but don't quit. That's the one thing that I will never allow myself to do, quit and say that is it. Because the day that happens, I know for me personally that it's over. So whoever's watching this, sorry, go on, sorry.
I think that statement is so important. Sometimes we don't give ourselves the permission to rest. And sometimes stepping out of things for a while or allowing ourselves to rest can sometimes feel like we're failing, or we can sometimes give ourselves too much pressure that we feel we just have to keep going and keep going on this treadmill. But sometimes you do have to rest to just regain some of that strength, to refocus, to get back in a place where you can actually hear from God. And I think it's so important that we give ourselves that permission to rest sometimes when we need to.
Yeah, no, it's really important. And you know, I know that I've pushed myself at times. I've pushed as far as my medical, where I know I should have rested. You know, and I think it comes down to people saying, "Oh, Darren, you're so strong. Oh, Darren, you know, it sounds great, but what people don't realize is what I felt inside." You know, and when people tell you constantly, "Oh, Darren, you're so strong," and all this kind of stuff, it really gets into your mind that you don't want to let people down. You know, you can't allow people to see you weak. You know, but there's been times where I've gone to the hospital and I've literally just burst into tears. You know, or you know, Bethan, she's like my renal mother, bless her. You know, she's known me since I was 16, and she just asked, "Darren, how are you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." But then she'd be like, "No, Darren, how are you?" And the tears would just come. You know, and we're just talking and we're just talking, and I'm just saying, "Listen, I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this," and I think we need to get to a place where we can say, "Do you know what? I'm tired. You know, I've had enough." You know, I think, yeah, we cannot be afraid to be real. We cannot be afraid to just say it as it is. And this part is really for Christians. You know, we act too much. We play too much. You know, somebody says, "How are you?" "Oh, God is good. God is going to bring me through." No, you know what? Great. That's great. I'm all believer for faith. Trust me, I am. But there comes a time where you take that mask off, pull it down, and say, "Do you know what, Latoya? I'm tired. I'm fed up. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm bitter. I'm twisted. You know, I just need to sleep." You know, I just need a pause on this particular situation. You know, and when that happens, you feel so much better. You know, after I've gone to Bethan or whoever and I've cried it out, or I've shouted, or I've screamed, you know, I felt so much better for it. You know, and it almost, your strength is renewed after that.
Yeah.
You know, because that you've released that valve that was there for so long from play acting. You know, and then you just feel so much better. So I would say, do you know what? Just be real. Just be real. You know, I'm not saying, "Oh, you know, somebody asks you how you are, oh, every time." No.
Yeah, there's a difference between being real and becoming a complainer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
100%. You got to get that balance. You know, and this is what I'm saying really to Christians. You know, because I speak to Christians all the time, and you know, you can blatantly tell they're going through hell. You know, you can tell, but they're, "Oh, God is so good. I'm fine. I'm fine." And you know, when people do that, I'm like, "Okay, cool. You're fine." You know, I'm not going to force it. But I've learned through my medical situation that I've had to sometimes say what I'm feeling. You know, I've had to go to my parents. I've had to go to my wife. I've had to go to, you know, and I say medical professionals, but they're now my friends. They're more like family because I've been there so long. But I've had to go to them and just say, "Do you know, I've had enough. I've really had enough. I don't want treatment today. You know, I don't fancy taking my medication today, or I fancy having 10 burgers today, even though I'm not meant to." You know, but yeah, we have to be real in this life. If we're going to overcome and be who we meant to be, there comes a time where you have to stop acting.
Yeah. And I think as well, along the lines of the support structure, we have to find that safe place, and sometimes that safe place needs to be a person that we can go to and just spill it all without fear of judgment. And there's a saying, actually, I heard a preacher say a couple of years ago, I've never forgotten it, but he said, "God cannot deliver the person that you pretend to be."
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think
That's so powerful, because it's the truth. God knows anyway.
Of
But
course.
if you're continuing to pretend that you don't need Jesus, you don't need people, you've got it all
Yeah.
together, he's just waiting for that moment when you're ready to actually say, okay, Lord, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's so important, that, you know, we have to be real with God and
Yeah.
with the people that we can say, you know, are our support structure and our safe
Mhm.
place.